In the ever-evolving world of business, a revolution is underway. Welcome to Hyperconnected Journeys, where the future of success begins right now. I'm your host, Ian Faison, and I'm joined by my co-host and industry leader, Raj Porkesta, to guide you through the intricacies of network transformation. We're here to be your compass in the realm of network transformation in a world that's customer-centric and interconnected. Join us on unleashing the power of hyperconnectivity. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. I am joined by my amazing co-host, Raj. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Ian?
Excited to chat with our new pal, Cisco. How are you?
I'm great, guys. Nice to be part of the panel.
Yeah, excited to have you on the show today. Obviously, we're going to get into building a hyper-connected enterprise, all the cool stuff that you're doing at Qualcomm, what it means to be a CIO today, and everything in between. So starting off, tell us a little bit about the scope of your role as global CIO of Qualcomm.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. So my name's Cisco Sanchez. I am the global CIO here at Qualcomm, and my role has lots of different pieces and parts. And so bear with me just for a second, but the CISO reports into me. So of course I care about cyber, but that is just one facet. I have all of the infrastructure, think servers, network, storage, all of the different data centers, all different cloud providers, all lines of business, so sales, marketing, accounting, finance, legal, all of those applications report into me. I run all of the grid, so the engineering tool sets that help build the next great silicon for the amazing phones, automobiles, IoT devices that we create. So all those tool sets underneath. Even though we are a fabless organization, we have 3 fabs that have little RF filters. And so my team supports all of the fabs that are built out from the all shop floor to automation inside of the facility. We have a global development center in India that it rolls up into me. I support all lines of business. So automotive and IoT are the new ones that we're creating. And so it's diverse M&A activity for integration. Typically, IT is one of the first ones into the M&A scope. And so about 2,500 people and about 800 contractors that roll up into my organization. It's a great team. And the beauty of the organization is not only you get to see things, but you get to interact with all different business partners. And so that's kind of the joy of my life is I get to play with everybody. And it's very nice to see.
Take us back. First job in IT?
First job in IT. So I was an intern in IT. I was an intern for FedEx, developing software. So think of in the early days of, and it transformed to from Perl to Java to Python and so on and so on. And I've done all of them. I've coded in COBOL, I've coded in Perl, I've coded in Unix script, Java, C, C++, Python. And so I was a software developer, early days, and became from developing to architecture. So, drawn on the board, writing boxes and how a system should be built out and created and saying this is the best way designed for future proof. And so I became an architect and love the role because you get to show here's what the future could be. And so that was cool. And then went into management and lived in Chile, Argentina, Brazil. As part of FedEx, moved to Belgium for 4 years. I moved to Memphis for 4 years. And then thinking, because FedEx's hub is in Memphis, and so I was thinking that's home. And then it was off to Pittsburgh. I was a CIO for FedEx Ground for 4 years. And then this behemoth of a company that's creating great stuff, Qualcomm called and said, hey, we got something that you might want to look at. And I've been here 2.5 years and no looking back, and still great friends at FedEx. They're amazing people, but this is home. And I really love this place because we have influence on what the world could be like going forward. And it's because of all the technology that's getting created. It's because of all the things that we are inventing that haven't been invented yet that inspire me to be even more of a part of the technology landscape going forward. So it's been super cool, but great journey, and still friends, still mentors, and I love the role, and I wouldn't trade it in.
And how do you see yeah, wow, indeed. How do you see connectivity, playing a role in supporting what Qualcomm is doing from a business objective standpoint?
You know, connectivity is everything we do. And so if you think about the early days of Qualcomm being invented and CDMA and Irwin Jacobs saying that we should create something that allows for connectivity. And he boasted this ability for, as we know it as the mobile phone today, being able to connect and interact with people. That's the genesis of who we are. And so if you think about the mobile phone and then say, well, if you can create a mobile phone and have connectivity, think about the cars and the IoT devices. Everything needs to be connected. It's not just one piece and part. It's everything needs to be connected in a way that allows for lives like ours to be super simple and easy, and stay connected and be part of things, push more data back and forth. And, I know you guys remember the days of the mobile phone. It was, uh, or just the landline where you had to, if you wanted to call your girlfriend, you'd have to like try to take the line and pull the cord as far as you can so your parents didn't hear you. Remember that? Because I do. And then you get to a point where like now we have a mobile phone. I don't have to hide. I can just go to the room and see something. And then you wanted connectivity to the ability to send data back and forth, video data like we are today. And I think it's now more and more pervasive across how you should be connected to through everything. So you can call your parents, your children, just to stay connected because that's the relevancy of what the human nature is, I think. And this podcast, the Hyperconnected, is what we do. It's like we have to be hyperconnected because that creates connections and alignment. And so I think Qualcomm is really a part of that, helping to drive that change. If it's 5G, if it's connected laptops, if it's connected mobile phones, or now the next generation of automobiles, it's everything is connected. So super part of it. It's a very exciting
My
journey.
lights for the podcast, they're connected to my phone. I turn them on and off with my phone,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, and you go like this and make it probably blink and have like a little a studio
Oh, I
behind
could
you
do
if you wanted
yeah, I
to.
could do also I could change the colors, I could do, everything all with my phone. It is all connected. And indeed it's hyper connected, just like our first segment, building a hyper connected enterprise. When you sat down, coming to the role, and obviously that's evolved over the last couple of years, but what was your strategic vision for Qualcomm in achieving a hyper connected enterprise environment?
Yeah. So at least for me, I know how to do. There's two types of roles, by the way, for IT. There's a service provider of like doing stuff to help make sure that the business is moving forward, and then there's a strategic partner. And we're both, by the way. It's not just we're a service provider and we just hand out laptops and turn the network on. It's that because we should do that. But then it's also how do you strategically move the company into a direction that's required for the future and making it almost like future proof for the way that we want to build things and less duplicity. And so my vision coming in was first understand the environment, uh, understand the things that are going on in place, understand the vision from our CEO and the other executives, so we can ensure that whatever the IT does is not just an IT thing, it's in support of the business. And so we've done that for the last year. The next step has been now how do we ensure that we start to influence change to allow for a better, more holistic ecosystem? And so if you think about like all the different adjacency businesses we're going after, automotive, IoT, a very amazing laptop PC called the XLE, it's gonna be super cool. And so all of these mobile AI, and when you look at all of those areas, they all can look independently, like just fractions of capabilities. But the reality is they have synergies across all of them. Connectivity, interaction, data that allows for more consistency experience. And so my vision has been is like how do you drive change across all of them? So you're striping like almost a horizontal stripe between all of them, saying here's the common capabilities that could be built out and still have personality on top for each of those lines of business. But it's the commonality where you're going to get speed, agility, margins are better, Security is easier. You can scale it, and so that's been the vision and strategy we've been going after for the last 9 months to about a year, and it's been
Let's,
great. Really good.
let's go. If I can ask you a question here, specifically when you talked about being a service provider and also a forward thinker, what percentage of time do you spend in each of them, and what would you like to spend? Because this is something that I find very
Great.
interesting about, all the leaders.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the way that I looked at it was think of it as almost like a pyramid. And at the bottom of the pyramid, we call it operational excellence. And I know Raj, you're very familiar. Operational excellence is really just do your job well. Don't have outages and make sure your KPIs are well. And it's more of just like the blocking and tackling, to be super honest. You can do that really well. You satisfy part of the pyramid. But if you don't do that well, you can't do the other things. And so the second thing that we've been focusing on is I call that the inside game. Inside game means what are the things that we can do internally that allows for better alignment? That means architecture disciplines, some data fabric, some cataloging, the way that you do structures, capabilities, commonality. But we control that. So from an IT organization, I can do that. And then the last top of that pyramid is the outside game. The outside game is the interaction with the business partners. And so for a lot of the first year was doing that baseline operational excellence really, really, really well. And then the next part has been, let's do the inside game and show how methodologies matter, and let's change the way we do things internally. And now we're going after. And so to answer the question, when I look at where most of my role is, because we do the other stuff pretty well, it's been spending on the outside game or interacting with being a strategic partner. Is probably more like 60, 70%, and 30% the other. And primarily because we baselined it and we made it solid. Of course, there are production issues, and I dive in and check it out, make sure we're okay. But it's response time, and we built that muscle really, really well. That allows us to go play in the other spaces, which I think is crucial for the way that the CIOs can roll out their role,
100%.
because I think we deserve it. But
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, I mean, and I'd be curious what your thoughts are on I know, and I know it's a balance like this.
Oh, yes.
I would love to do 100%, but that's not realistic. And so we're trying to balance appropriately based off of timing. But
So, typically when I speak to, the other CIOs, what I hear back is they'd like to spend, 50, 60% of their time in the strategic thinking, but they are not at this point of time because the operational issues bog them down, right? They're spending around 60% or 70% of their time in the operational issues and 30, 40% time in the transformational, journey that they want to build out. So, you are a bit different out here. It's good to know that, you've kind of sorted the baseline. And that's where fundamentally, the building blocks needs to be very strong, right? And you can build, 50 stories on top of that. No problem.
yeah, well, and that's the thing that we've been structuring. It it's like the Maslow hierarchy. He was like,
Mhm.
I got to solve my base needs first before I go after something I really want. And I think the team has done a really good job of just doing that baseline, and then everything can stack up really well. Otherwise, if you don't have that base, man,
Yeah,
you're going to be crushed. Like,
correct.
yeah, skyscraper is a great example. The further down you dig and make sure it's right, the higher you can go. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I've always heard CIOs sort of talk about the shift from being a ticket taker to sort of being able to set the agenda and to set the technology objectives, and like you can't really ever escape the ticket taking piece of it. But if that's the only thing, if the only thing that you're doing is being reactive, or if that's the majority of your time, then clearly like you're not being proactive enough to step in and solve the things that need those tickets to be created in the first place.
yeah, and the reality is that I know that we do that. It's part of the role, and I'm okay with it. Um, but if we just did that role, man, I would go bananas. It's just, I might pull my hair out. It's just, I think, and the reason I say this is we see a lot of interaction. In the CIO or IT space, we see things that are
Yeah.
happening. Either because we plug it in, we turn it on, we secure it, we scale it, or we build it. or one of the facets of that is it's our responsibility to also help drive efficiencies and synergies. And I don't want the next CIO to come in and saying, "Man, what did Cisco do? Why do we have 17 of these things?" And I want to do it properly and make sure it's done right and clean the house constantly, not wait till spring season. Let's clean today. It's always.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Raj, I'm curious from a from a Tata standpoint, y'all introduced this hyper-connected ecosystem, for interoperable connected business systems. So, like, I'm curious just how you think about, that digital fabric and building agile and scalable and resilient, that foundation that you were talking about.
Sure. Uh, when you think about hyper-connected ecosystem, right, what does it entail? It is heavily technology dependent. And if you just go back to the first thing that Cisco mentioned in terms of, he's doing 100 things at this point of time, right? He's managing the infrastructure, the applications, the servers, processes. In that, some skill sets will also come in. And what all these things does is, he's doing this to deliver experience back to his users, right? To his partners, to his customers. Now, to do this, what Cisco will have to do is, look at multiple disparate, solution segments, for example, connectivity, collaboration, cloud, edge, IoT, security, etc. And on top of that, one thing that Cisco didn't touch, and I'm sure it's kind of a sore area for him, is legacy and legacy processes, legacy servers, along with organization silos. When you think about all these things, it's extremely complex, right? What we do is at Tata Communication, when you think about the digital fabric, it brings together all these platforms, all these tools, which is required to drive this, all the solutions, including the expertise, so that we can help CIOs to simplify this complexity. At the end of the day, Cisco should be looking more at the future rather than solving for that, the base layer as we was talking about, correct? And believe me, base layer has more complexity. The use cases will be on the top. So that's what digital fabric and hyper-connected ecosystems do for enterprises, and that's what we are helping enterprises do and drive.
Yeah, and actually would agree with Raj. I think there's every if you've been into the business longer than 3 years, you have legacy somewhere. Qualcomm has been around for about 38 years, and of course there's legacy, and it requires, and it's been there for a long time. So it's almost like taking root, and so you almost have to like dig it out and try to get it out of there. And some of it's super hard because it wants to grow back, or you don't see the business case. I think a lot of the things that we're transforming and doing is saying, how do we ensure that we don't just forget about the legacy? We bring it forward with us and figure out how to migrate it into the next stuff we're doing. But you got to find those synergies and values. So as we're building this, how do you remove this? And when you're building this, how do you remove this? And so it's not like, well, it's someone else's problem. No, no, in the IT world, it's your problem. It's because you inherited it, or you created it, or you have to remediate it. So it's kind of a fun journey. But I think the balance is how do you take what you're doing for the future and ensure that you're pulling out of some of the legacy, maybe not all of it, some of the legacy that you have done in the past, so it's better future proof.
And so when you're thinking about in like integrating emerging technologies, like Gen AI or machine learning or things like that, um, and how do you make sure that you can do that and you can be agile? I love the idea of sort of the giant a giant oil tanker, or the cruise ship or whatever it is, versus the speedboat analogy of like just turning 1 degree, getting this thing to turn one degree is hard enough. But when you're trying to bolt on new technologies, it can be pretty challenging.
Yeah, I was waiting when we get to Gen AI because that's like almost the first topic on everybody's mind these days. When I look at these future things that are out there, like a Gen AI or large language models, it is how do you take the synergies that are close to it. So if you take like LLMs or Gen AI, it has a root or genesis of a lot of the AI ML that we were doing in the past. It's different. I know it's using a large language model. It's the approach is different on either how you train it or how you use it in inference. But the way that we should be approaching it is looking at it from essence of what we've done in the past. And AI ML or ML, traditional ML, there's a lot of great synergies on how you take things and reuse it. It's also, if you particularly in Gen AI, if you want to make it useful for data, you need to ensure that you have the right data elements so you can build your vector database and have your retrieval augmented generation, or RAG as it's referred to be able to start to be able to feed it into. And so there's a lot of like great disciplines that we understand from an IT world that take advantage of it. To answer your question directly, is like, how do you take the big boat that you have and launch speedboats to understand and just discovery? And so you could say, we're going to go this way because there's a great island that we want to go dock to. This one we don't want to go to. And so we do have a lot of innovation thought process just inherent of who Qualcomm is. But we launch these boats to say, go check this out, validate, and let's figure out how to take the boat to a different direction because it has synergies, value, speed, efficiencies, or so on. And in Gen AI space, we have a lot of great use cases that I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit. But it's here. It's not fake. It's useful. I think the question will be for all of us is how fast can we start to leverage it in everything we do?
And Raj, what are you seeing as you're talking to other CIOs, and being a provider of IT infrastructure, getting in front of clients, and as they're trying to integrate Gen AI and things like that into their foundation?
Um, I'll start with what Cisco ended, right? He said use cases. At the end of the day, when we go and speak to our clients, other CIOs, what becomes interesting is what is the use case and can it be implemented today, not 5 years down the line, right? If you think about what AI can do if you start from that baseline, every dollar that you spend on AI, it can give you a return of around $4.50. That's a huge return, right? So therefore, everybody is interested in that. However, you know, can there be a use case which makes sense? So, for example, if I go and speak to Cisco and say, this is what Gen AI can do, first question he's going to ask me is, can you do it today, right? And make it happen right now. I'll give you an example out here. So, for example, one of our customers came back and said, you know what, I have a problem. There are a lot of my employees who lose time when they go into a meeting room. And how do they lose it is where if the Wi-Fi goes down, they have to shift the rooms, right? Now, Gen AI can always say that, hey, the Wi-Fi has gone down here. So in the calendar itself, the meeting room should shift from, say, meeting room A to meeting room B. Brilliant use case. Can it be done? Yes, theoretically it can be done, right? Now, it's not only the meeting room which is of interest out here, right? There are a whole lot of connected pieces which will be there, starting from how your LAN is working, how your WAN is working, and at the end of the day, maybe how the cloud interconnect is working. If the entire thing is not programmed in the right manner, just by saying that, hey, I can identify that the room is not operable at this point of time, it's not giving any sense or any value to anybody, right? If I go and tell Cisco, hey, I can do it, he'll say fine, but you know, what are you doing at the end of the day? Just giving me information doesn't make sense. Make it something which is executable and then give me result, right? So long story short, what I'm saying out here, Ian, is that uh, if Gen AI is very, very interesting, but then it needs to be implemented, and it needs to be implemented in a manner which then has impact into revenue, productivity, something, right? I have to show that to Cisco, and that's where he'll get excited and say, I want it today.
Yeah, fully agree. I mean, I think, yeah, and I agree. Raj, I think when I look at the Gen AI, tons of use cases, and you can go chase after all of them. I mean, you can because it's quickly everybody wants something in the Gen AI space because of an ability or speed or efficiency. The question though that large organizations should have and challenges is what are the areas of the best opportunity for the mass, and then do that one, and then do the next one, and do the next one. I think if we do a shotgun approach, it it, it dilutes your resources, to be super honest, and it doesn't give us all the ability of efficiencies. And so, at least in Qualcomm space, we've been looking at what are the big use cases that we go after, and then we violently attack them. And I don't know if we should say the word violent, but violently attack them to ensure that it's being done properly and built out right, and not wait. And we know it's going to be wrong. Of course, it will be wrong, but it'll be less wrong the more you try. And so we need to identify how we can build it, and then go and incrementally start to change it. But we can't just wait, because I think these are enablers that help us drive change. Taking Raj's example, I was thinking you're going to go with like transcripts. We don't have Wi-Fi issues here at Qualcomm. Kind of invented some of that Wi-Fi stuff.
Yep.
Well, so, but you mentioned some of those things that you're violently going after. Hey, I was in the Army, so I think it's definitely allowed.
Oh yeah, West
Yeah,
Point,
that's
right?
right.
Was it West Point?
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Thanks. But so I'm curious, like what are some of those projects that you identified early on and said, hey, this is something we really want to go after and try to get to a use case quickly?
Yeah. So when we broke into, so we have about 50,000 people here at Qualcomm. We broke it into segments of saying where can we have the biggest impact to ensure that we have. And so we broke it into two segments. One is knowledge workers, to think of like interacting with documentation, Q&A. And then we also identified software developers, because we have a lot of them. And how do you make both those populations super effective and efficient and drive change for them? There's lots of other areas that we can go do, but those are the two primary areas that we're focused on. When the early days of when ChatGPT came out, everybody wanted to gravitate towards that. And so within Qualcomm, we identified, well, we probably shouldn't just use that one. We should identify how we can do things smart, because of a lot of things that were going on early on. And so we built our own models. We took permissible LLMs out there and started to build a framework, an architecture framework to say, let's solve the knowledge workers, let's solve the developers. We had a code word that we leveraged called Imagine, but it's called Inference as a Service now, but it was a code word that we were building. Imagine what you can do with AI. And so now it's Inference as a Service. And so in this platform, we're identifying how do we ensure that we allow for developers to create software fast and have an AI that allows for them to see the code and then start to build out appropriately. We know that there's third-party products out there. The reason why we wanted to build our own was, one, to try out the hardware, because we have inference cards called Qualcomm Cloud AI 100. And I wanted to try that out and be customer zero. And so try it out to see how it works. But I also wanted to make our software developers efficient. And so we built this engine. It's API called. You can call it for your IDE or a browser. Doesn't really matter. And as you write software, you tab and it starts to build the code for you. And it's been very useful to allow for that uptick in productivity. So that was one use case, and we were solving thousands of developers. The second one was in the Q&A. We wanted people to interact with their own documentation, not just with the world documentation, but our own internal, to allow for efficiencies in either audit or in finance or in our customer engineering team. And so we built another model using RAG, vector database, feeding our documentation into it, so we can control the entitlements, security, scale, try out our inference card. And so we were doing all of this, and we have about 1,000 people that are using that as a framework. And it's been super useful to see efficiencies, because that makes, and Raj, you probably like this too, that makes me happy. I'm sure any IT person makes them happy, because you're seeing people use the tool sets. We are seeing efficiencies and happiness more in their day-to-day activity, versus like, I wish I could find I wish, it's some more efficiencies you get out of it. And so it's been a delight to see. Along that, we built some other ones, but those are the primary two use cases that are helping us to drive change, and then try out our cool, AI 100 cards that are available.
Yen, as Cisco was giving the example, I recalled one of the customer, interactions that I had not so long back, where they are now developing vaccinations with the help of AI and GPUs and so on and so forth. Earlier what used to happen is that you do that lab test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that lab test is being done on an inference model, as Cisco was saying. So the time taken to build a vaccine has drastically reduced. Earlier it used to take, 36 months to 48 months. It can be done in 12 months at this point of time, wherein it can actually go for approval. So that's the kind of, I was just saying, $1 to $4.50. This is a clear example of it. And I'm sure Cisco will have clear example of when he was talking about, software development, what is the time it takes now vis-a-vis what it used to take earlier. So there are
Yeah,
advantages.
yeah. Which I think is super cool. Like in your vaccine example, one, it's like saving lives. It's preventing a lot of so that's super impactful. And I think that the reality is we have a lot of these documentations, we have a lot of these studies, we have a lot of these cases. And what's interesting about the LMs is that when you start to feed it the content, wow, the power that you have on it and being able to see things is super important, and it can help drive things to be more efficient. Um, or it's just to run the case study faster. And so like in that example, we feed it a lot of the documentation about Qualcomm's content. And so our CE engineers are faster on responding to customers, which gives, the CE engineer a better experience, but also the end customer a better experience because there's like faster response and not having to wait. But it's so I think there's so much more that we haven't tapped into yet that I think will help us drive efficiencies and allow us to be just a better world, and hopefully better hyper connected.
All right, let's get to our next segment, digital ecosystem strategy. Cisco, I'm curious, what is Qualcomm's approach to multi-cloud?
Great question. I like them all, and the reason I'm going to say I like them all is because I use them all. At Qualcomm we have a ton of on-prem and colo, but then I use all of the three major cloud providers, and the reason is the type of data, type of capabilities that they offer. It's also to ensure that I have the opportunity for leverage the others as appropriate. And and as you know, we're a global company. In certain regions, it's more preferred for certain cloud providers. The products that we're offering also have to run on multiple clouds. They can't just be on one anymore, because at the end of the day, the customer gets a choice. If they want to run it on Azure or AWS or GCP, they should be able to. And so what that does though is requires the way you build your applications to be different. And so it's making sure that the architecture is right, so you have the ability to move as appropriately. But I like them all. I think they're all great. We're partners in crime with all of them, so I think the relationships are strong, and I like it. Keep it that way.
Eh, obviously every single, CIO is in their own version of multi-cloud and their journey and all that sort of stuff. Um, have there been instances where your network infrastructure has held you back in evolving the multi-cloud journey, or even maybe not necessarily you, but friends that that where they've had similar sort of things happen?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I think in general, especially now with Gen AI, there's this big push for more compute, more network gear, more GPUs, and so I think you have to have a conscious effort on knowing what those timelines are. Network gear is, I think, 50 some weeks. It's out there, so you have to plan differently than you would in the past. And so because we have a lot of on-prem, and I'll talk a little bit on the cloud, but because we have a lot on-prem, and the reason we have a lot on-prem is I need physical servers for the lot of design we do, and creating the silicon. We have to ensure that we plan better, like plan more efficiently to understand I don't have to wait 52 weeks for network gear. I don't have to wait 35 for GPUs. I don't have to wait 18 weeks for servers. And so we plan we plan a lot, ensuring that we understand how we can start to pull things in, because um, when the business is looking for some new capabilities, we don't want to say, "Hey, man, I'm sorry, it's 53 weeks, can't deliver it this year." That may not make me last too long here. So we plan very, very, very efficiently, and we start to identify. We also, when we're working with the cloud providers, we do a lot of forecasting out, planning with them too, so they understand what it may need to be reserved and what may need to be as just temporary workload that we need for burst. And so there's a lot of planning. I think this is what's interesting. The Gen AI is causing more and more of the cloud providers to go and look at additional space, because even in the colo space that we have, we we buy a lot of power, and it's coming at harder and harder to find because people want all the power they can because of the Gen AI, I guess Gen AI revolution that's going on. And so, but we plan, and I think we have to thoughtfully plan. But without the planning, I think we would all be in a little bit of trouble, at least here at Qualcomm. And Raj, I'm sure you're seeing something very similar on your space of
Oh,
it's
yes.
hard to find power right now.
Oh,
But
yes.
we gobble up what we can.
Exactly the point. Yeah. Similar thoughts I'm also hearing from a lot of other customers, specifically because uh, one thing which I'm sure you're grappling with is that last year this happened. Is it going to be the same this year, or is it going to be double? That's where the plan goes. Let me at least do 1.5, right? So at this point of time, that's the main issue, yeah, in which a lot of enterprises are kind of grappling with.
Obviously, we can talk multi-cloud forever. But um, Paraj, any other sort of thoughts on supporting folks and thinking about cost efficiency? I mean, obviously, this is like the time where everyone is, especially in big startup world, where scale efficiently rather than sort of scale at all costs, growth mode. So people do have to think about their money a little bit differently than they used to. So yeah, just curious what you're seeing there.
So, when you think about clouds, right? Many a times I've seen startups saying that, oh, I'm a single cloud, right? Uh, and then they're using, for example, Salesforce, or they're using, any other, application as a service, right? So if you're using any other application as a service, by default, from a network perspective, you are multi-cloud, right? Just because you're on one hyperscaler and you've taken some application as a service doesn't mean that you're not, multi-cloud. So that's the first thing. And when I go to a few enterprises who are like very established enterprises, they'll say, "Oh, you know what? I'm only on one hyperscaler, and I have my own colo. So I am, I'm not multi-cloud." Again, not true, because your colo is actually a part of the cloud. Now, yeah, think about it. When you speak to say Cisco or other CXOs, one of the big challenges that they have is uh, you know cloud means internet, right? Cloud doesn't mean that you're going to connect it with the earlier level of, say, for example, 100G or whatever, right? It's all internet right now. It's not point to point any longer. Internet is something that is open for everybody, right? And internet follows a simple rule, which is least cost routing, which means that Cisco's main application, when it is going from their data center to one of the hyperscalers, it's actually going on a least cost routing, which is the most important packet for Cisco, right? And I'm sure he's worried about it. So that's one of the worry, that how do you ensure that this internet I can manage, I can control? That's point number one. Point number two is visibility. Now, with the management, he's extremely concerned about visibility. And the third thing, which CXOs are very, very concerned about when it comes to multi-cloud, specifically, in Cisco's shoes, where he says he loves all the three clouds, for example, hyperscalers, I mean, he has his own colos, and I'm sure he has multitude of applications as a service, right? So, which means there's a complex, very, very complex middle layer, right? So, how do you simplify that middle layer? If you ask me, the biggest complexity that I've heard is simplifying this complex middle layer. Then on top of it, how do I build something which can show me the visibility and I can control this, right? So these are the three things which occurs. If you do not do these three things well, you'll have cost, implications, because, if you do not manage the cloud well, then cost implications will go through the roof for you. Second is, you talked about complexity and simplicity, right? If you do not know what you have, obviously it is extremely complex. Something which is a black box is complex for all of us, right? But if you know what it is, it's simple for you. And therefore you can plan for it better, right? So that's what we see from our discussions and all the CXO friends that I have there, and I'm betting that Cisco agrees to all that I've said just now.
Yeah, fully agree. And the only thing I probably add is it has to be seamless. So at the end, the customer internal, they don't really care. Like, does it go to Google or does it go to AWS or Azure or or Adobe or Sales? Because we're not giving them the network path. So it almost has to be super seamless on how they bounce back and forth to anything, and it's just connected. And so as the end user in a conference room or in an office in Singapore, it's just the same. And everything, all that complexity underneath is established and well done and monitored and alerted and processed super efficiently to ensure that I don't know. It just works. And that's what I think the end customer result we want to have is they should never know. We got it. And the complexity lets abstract it all out and know that it's monitored, alerted, secured, and cybersecurity is all in all of it. And we have the right ports and we understand which data should be going where. And we understand the entitlements. And it's not just, I have to click and rehost and relog on to this and try that for this one. And that's the beauty of what like the IT organization should do is just like make it seamless. Let us do the complexity. I got it. That's what we're really good at.
Yeah, it's pretty wild that the office of the CIO went from, the senior technologist to also you're doing employee experience just broadly. And then now it's like, also now you're doing customer experience broadly. And it's like, wait, isn't that just the whole business?
I'll actually say the opposite right now, Yan. The first thing that I'm sure Cisco thinks about right now is experience, what customers and employees.
Oh, for sure.
Then the other things come in, right? So that became the baseline. Earlier, it was the opposite way, right? Let me think about technology first, then I'll think about experience. Today, you have to think about the experience layer first, then think about the technology behind that.
Yeah, we're
Cisco?
saying the same thing.
Yeah. What I agree, man. Like the experience really matters of how people interact with things, because like that's how that's how we get graded. To be super honest, like how was it to go into a conference room and hit one button and I get connected, or I'm in the office in Wuxi or Singapore or Germany or Court, and it's the same connectivity. Super cool. It's not I have to do this and try this gyration to get in. It's just seamless. And so we do think of customer experience. That's like one of the first things on any like architecture design of an application is how does it work? How does it delight customers and interactions with our partners, or doesn't work? Because you'll hear like that, like it doesn't work. This takes too long, and so we think about a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely not on the CIO job description 20 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think in my COBOL class, I don't think we had that.
Well, let's look forward into the future with our next segment, Vision for the Future. Yeah, curious, just like looking in your crystal ball, what are the things that in the next 5 to 10 years, I know it's impossible to predict the future, but obviously we talked a bunch about, Gen AI and machine learning, but any other things that you feel like you want to be investing in for, Qualcomm's digital ecosystem or just technologies or tools or anything that you feel pretty passionate about for the future?
Yeah, it's interesting. At least I know we talked about Gen AI, but I honestly think we're just in the first inning. And the reason I say this is um, there's a lot of training activity that's taking place. So think of like these big, large models that are getting created and being used. There's probably only like, and I'm making this up, but I'm probably close, six-ish companies out there in the world that actually can create these large models because it takes a lot of horsepower to create a trillion model, a trillion parameter model. It takes a lot of work. And then there's these smaller models that are getting generated. But I think that's the first inning. The second part is it how do you use it? And so the training moves to inference pretty quickly. And you and Raj and I are users of it. And so we're going to be inferencing a lot of the content. And I think today the solution we know is as a user, I come from my client and I go to the cloud and I ask a question and it comes back. And it does work. It works really well. But there's other stops in the road. Like there is your PC, your mobile phone. It has a ton of compute power. It has the ability to run a lot of parameters. Then there's your colo or your on-prem, which is before cloud that you can run a lot of parameters. We have our AI card that runs 870 tops, which is a lot on one single card. And so, and then you have the cloud. And I think with the interesting thing for us is how do you use all three of them seamlessly? Like the previous conversation of, I don't care if I go to the cloud. I don't care if I keep it here, end user. But we care from an IT profession. We care because otherwise you're going to have all these cloud providers and our ESG goals are just shot because we have all this more infrastructure and you're not leveraging the other stuff. Your on-prem or your colo, your cool PC that's coming out, your mobile phone, your car, your IoT devices. And so I think there's a lot that still hasn't been tapped into on leveraging how to build out and use the inference that's there and have an LLM that's running constantly pervasive and doing things for you. And as the end user, you just ask a question, do stuff, or it cleans up your day and allows for a better AI experience. That I think that's the exciting part. That it's maybe that second inning, third inning that we're going to go after, where inference everywhere, not just inference in cloud, that I think are going to allow for use cases that we haven't even thought of yet. Like imagine the day, so for me, as an example, I plug my phone in at night. I'm sure you guys do too. Sometimes I forget. Most of the time I do it. And then in the morning when I wake up, I unplug it. I check my email, check my personal email, and I remove myself from all kinds of spam that comes in. And then I look at my calendar, and then I look at what do I have to wear today? Do I have to dress up smart for you guys today? Or can I wear a t-shirt? And so do I need to buy a gift? And so I look at my calendar. Imagine like your AI that's sleeping while you're sleeping, working all night, looking at your day, unsubscribing from much email, saying, hey, you got to go buy a gift for your wife because she's coming up and you forgot. You got to wear a tie because Roz likes you in ties, as an example, right? And so imagine that being done, but it's all done on the edge versus always having to go to the cloud because it knows my day, And so I think all these use cases are coming where we haven't explored them yet, which makes me super excited about the future because that allows us to be more productive, allows us to think about what we really need to think about, not like I have to unsubscribe myself and do this and do that. It does it for you. And I think, so that's super exciting. The other thing I think is super exciting for the future is how to leverage some of that data sets that we haven't harnessed well enough yet. And I know we've been like in this data, remember big data and then data migration, then ML and then predictive. I think now with AI, you can do more with data to allow it to optimize and hopefully create vaccines faster, hopefully create better experiences. And so I think there's so much that's super exciting, but AI on edge is going to be super fun. That's going to be a blast. It really is. For a nerd like me, it's going to be super fun.
That was going to be one of the things that I was going to say is just like AI at the edge is so interesting. Like I think about, like I just put in we're planting some new plants and we have this, this is a very physical thing, right? It's like water is shooting out of the pipes onto the plants that you want to get there. Well, I mean, looking at this piece of technology and I'm like, this is this is so broken. I'm like, it should know everything about, my plants and when they should get water and all this stuff. And we should have sensors and all this. I'm like, it's all coming. I mean, it all exists, right? But where is it now? So yeah, I agree. It's like AI at the edge to me is like so fascinating for all the things that use technology or should be using technology.
I think that's the great part about this world of technology. And that's why I love it so much. It's constantly evolving and changing. And so it's never the same thing. And so you're always learning. And I think it's a bright spot to be in IT because you're not going to just stop and say, I'm done. I learned. It's the next wave, the next wave, the next thing. And I think it's an exciting time where, at least from a Qualcomm perspective, we want to make sure that we are connecting everything. But because we want to connect everything, it has to be like super seamless. And I love the name of their podcast. It has to be hyper-connected. It really
Right.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. And here, Cisco, one of the things that, I'd just like to add to what you said, when you think about the future, right, the growth of technology or the trajectory of technology is going so fast that, we were all taught earlier that, if you're stagnant for a period of time, then, your efficiency goes down, right? Now, if I look at the trajectory of change in technology, it is going so fast that my learning cycle is also going through a higher trajectory at that point of time, right? Otherwise, I'm not able to catch up. So, Ian, just to add to Cisco, what I really think is, earlier if I had to learn, say, 5 things in a month, today, maybe I have to learn 25 things in a month. Going forward, maybe it will be 50 things in a month, right? And that's where, uh, the learning is not going to stop. That's point number one. But more from a human perspective, what's going to happen is, some things will be influenced by the machine, right? What will come from us is the human connect, the intelligence, and also more importantly, the empathy. I don't think empathy is going to be passed on to the machines anytime soon. That's going to be driven by us. And that's where Cisco, you keep talking about culture, right? Culture is something that, we'll keep building, and culture is something that we'll keep bringing into, as human connect and taking things forward.
I agree.
Fantastic. Raj, couldn't have put it any better. Cisco, wonderful having you on the show. Thanks for joining Hyperconnected Journeys. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, I mean, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I think what you guys are doing is very valuable in ensuring people understand what's coming and how it's happening. And so I appreciate being on the podcast and look forward to the next time.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks so much, Cisco. Thank you for joining us on Hyperconnected Journeys, where we explore the minds of technology innovators, future-proofing their digital infrastructure. Go ahead and leave us a comment to share your thoughts on today's episode. And be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to podcasts to stay updated on our latest episodes. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, unleash your own power of hyperconnectivity.